KYNE.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's prolific time zones. I've quit trying to count. All of them, nevertheless, covered by this great program. It is my honor and privilege to be with you, your host, through the weekend. And it was a show ago that we had an hour scheduled with Whitley Strieber, and an hour prior to broadcast, I called Whitley, and all I got was, oh my God, Ann's collapsed, and click. And then later we began to get details of what had occurred, and it's sort of been an evolving thing. So here he is. I've got him tonight, and we'll get an update. Author of Communion, co-author of War a Day, as well as a coming global superstorm, which became the movie The Day After Tomorrow. Have you seen the DVD yet? And a whole lot more. Very prolific in writing. He's married, of course, to Ann Strieber, who runs the website, which we'll tell you all about. And that was a strategic thing, that website tonight, a little while ago. We'll get to that, too. Whitley, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me, and everybody, thank you so much for all of the wonderful support that you've given us in this very, very, very troubled and time of great suffering for us.
There may be some out there, Whit, who don't know what happened. So just a real quick recap.
Last Saturday night, my wife had what's called a subarachnoid hemorrhage, or a bleed in the brain, with absolutely no symptoms and no warning whatsoever. She was saved by the quick work of doctors and has regained all of her facilities essentially. Right now, she is in a state of where the blood vessels are reacting to the blood that's been in her brain, and they're narrowing, and they're controlling this, but it's still a very scary time for us.
All right, we're going to come to an update in a moment. Let me do my break very quickly right now, and then we'll get caught up on Ann Strieber. All right, now up to date, Whitley.
Yeah.
What's happened? I mean, since last week, and since at first she was fine, sort of.
At first she was, really, really bad. Really out of it, but. She regained, it was clear that there were, as of yesterday morning, there were no deficits. In other words, there had been no brain damage sufficient to cause her to be unable to walk or talk or think or remember things.
And again, everybody, just to update you, they went in through her leg. This I thought was so incredible. They went in through a vein in her leg, went up into Ann's brain, and put a sort of a coil-like affair.
Right.
Yeah, that's incredible, Whitley.
But you know what? The thing about this whole experience is we all wonder, and some of the listeners have had this experience, I'm sure, what would it be like if, and here, this tragedy struck literally out of nowhere. We came home from watching the baseball game with our son, and she suddenly fell over without warning. And the first piece of superb medicine had to do with raising the pressure inside her brain so that the aneurysm would stop bleeding, like putting a lid on it, but not raising the pressure so much that it would do further damage to her brain.
How do they do that?
I don't know, but they did it.
Okay.
And then the next thing was putting in that coil and into the aneurysm to make the aneurysm basically disappear. And the doctor said that it was going to be very challenging, and he expected the operation to take 3 hours. 40 minutes later, he came out and said it had been placed successfully, and it was a good, successful operation. And I said to him, "Are you running out of challenges?" Because she's at a hospital, but they do a lot of these. And
all right, so she's been in the hospital for a week now, and it was pretty much okay until what, a little earlier?
Well, until this afternoon, we were together and talking, and she literally she complained of a headache and became silent. And, of course, we were absolutely shattered, Andrew and I. And they began to evaluate her, and they began to do things because they have assumed that this is a so-called vasospasm, but they're not sure.
Well, I don't know. What is that?
Well, this is when the blood vessels are irritated by the blood that has escaped into the brain, and they begin to contract.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Only in this case, they're not certain that that's what it is because it could be a combination of exhaustion because she's in a neurological ICU and she has to be evaluated every hour. Lack of sleep.
Sure.
It's noisy. She's not getting REM sleep. They had to because of the edema, she has very terrific headaches still, and they have to put her on strong medicine like Vicodin and morphine and things.
First thing is they stopped it, though, the bleeding, that is. Then you're left with the blood that has, the blood in the brain, and they usually worry about swelling, but eventually it is possible the body can reabsorb that blood on its own.
It is reabsorbing it. It's about 90% reabsorbed now.
Oh, wow.
All gone in about 18 hours. And so it's definitely, she's on the mend, and the only thing is that this period, the 10 days after the surgery, there is a danger of this so-called vasospasm of the narrowing of the arteries, which it could be happening, and they're going to go in and do an angiogram to determine whether or not it is happening, just because they feel that the angiogram is going to be quite low risk in her case. And
when I called you, you were on the phone with the hospital, and it was about the angiogram. I guess she's on her way to have that done now?
She'll have it not necessarily right now because she's she's a little woozy, but she's answering questions and not easy questions like what day is it, but they asked her what she did for a living.
Uh-huh.
And she said, I run a website. That's pretty good to remember that. And then they said what it's about, what kind of a website, and she said it's a website about leading edge science.
Huh.
And that's, and then she remembered our son's birth date.
Yeah.
1978.
Fairly complex question. So
those are complex questions so the doctors it could be that it's a combination of exhaustion, edema, and what's called ICU psychosis, which is a syndrome. It's not a disease of being in an ICU and not being able to get enough rest because, unfortunately, in her situation, they have to evaluate her neurologically, and the only best way to do that is to talk to people.
God, so every hour?
Every hour, and now what they're going to do is the angiogram will confirm the status of her entire brain, and we'll know if anything else is wrong.
Would opening your eyes and saying, I've about had it with you waking me up, would that be considered a cogent response?
She did that already.
Yeah, I bet.
Done that. She did that last night. She refused at that point. She said, I'm sick of sticking out my tongue, and she wouldn't stick her tongue out anymore. And then
I can't blame her.
The first sentence I heard her say was, I'm an ornery gal.
The astronauts go through that syndrome.
Right.
They get sick of being tested and anyway, I understand. So off she is to get an angiogram, but answering questions, okay, and that's where it is right now. Now
so we're hopeful that there's no further damage and that this vasospasm will be contained and controlled, if indeed that's what it is.
All right. Well, there are many saying prayers. I believe because
there sure are.
And there's substantial reason to believe that the power of prayer really, really does work.
Well, Art, I could not agree with you more, and neither could Anne. Anne is she's what I would describe as a very profound Christian. She's extremely private about her religious beliefs, and I'm not going to talk about it because she says our website is for everybody. But she understands things that most of us don't about the whole thing and about miracles and what they all are and about prayer. And I know from my wife and from her brilliant explanations to me that why prayer works. And so, yes, I know prayer works, and I want to...
I know it works, Whitley, but I don't know why it works. If you know why, I'd like to know.
Well, when Ann comes back to us, we'll get her on the show, and she'll tell us.
Well, that's a really good idea. I've never been, the point, the person prayed for, people have said, I felt something. I felt, and there was no doubt about it. It was a really distinct feeling. I knew people were praying for me. People will say that all the time, but I've never experienced that. I don't know.
I think I've experienced it this week because my wife, it's as if she has water skied Niagara Falls and survived. And, it seems as if this is going to be okay. And, even if it's not, even if there's a stroke in there somewhere that has occurred today, the chances of coming back from it completely are great. 3 years ago, this happened to my sister, and she was a devastated, completely vegetative state. She was totally destroyed.
Whitley, in Ann's case,
lives alone with 2 cats now.
In Ann's case, was there anything ahead of what happened? Was there, I've got a headache, or I feel dizzy, or no, huh? It just happened and she fell.
No. There was a little bit of, she was fatigued the 2 days before, but it was not like, it wasn't significant. We take a long hour walk every day and a vigorous one. And she was wanting to walk 45 minutes instead of an hour, but who would think that this minor little fatigue had to do with a dangerously catastrophic illness about to blow up in our faces?
Yeah.
That was it.
No warning, and that's the way it can happen, and so live life every moment as you get it.
She did her show on Thursday, Mysterious Powers, and which incidentally was another remarkable thing that happened. She happened to pick out a book about the miracle of the loaves and fishes called 12 Conditions of a Miracle. And she did an interview with the author, and I was fascinated. It was a wonderful interview, and I was listening to it and listening to him doing it, and she said afterwards, would you like to read the book? And I said, well, do you think I should? Because, I have to do a lot of reading in shows and stuff. And she said, I think this is one you should read very carefully. And I had this, and this book has been it was like as if the universe threw me and Andrew a lifesaver. It has just been the most incredibly helpful thing for us. And it came from Ann right before this happened.
Well, I'm unsure what to believe. There are what seems like miracles, Whitley, and then there's a lot of times when there's not miracles, so-called. And I'm not sure what to believe. I do believe that prayer works, but I don't know why. And I don't know how. It seems like we can scientifically actually satisfy ourselves, and they have with double-blind testing about prayer. It works.
Yes, it does work. Oh, yes. Prayer works, and prayer feels good. And the other thing about it is that for me, at least, because I understand the profundity, the actual inner profundity of what happened in the life of Christ, Christ is there for me, too. And really there, really there, alive, now, here. And that never leaves me. It never leaves Ann. And with that in us, there is something else there that guides you to an acceptance. And where I am now with this is, if this is the amount of time we've had together, then that's what we have. It was wonderful. And I will take it as my great treasure through the rest of what time I have here. If I get Annie back whole, I will be grateful to God and all who helped me and helped us and prayed for the rest of my life.
And there were a lot of people involved in Coast. A lot of the audience doesn't know this, but after we went on the air the first time, there were a lot of people who heard what was going on and really began to make things happen fast.
It was a stunner. I made a call. I was at a hospital I knew nothing about, and I called for any professionals who worked at that hospital to come help us get through the hospital, because you never know whether it turned out to be a wonderful hospital, Kaiser Permanente on Sunset in Hollywood. But I was alone in a city I don't live in, and with just my son, and he's a great help, but he was just as at sixes and sevens about what to do as I was. The neurological OR nurse heard the show, threw on her clothes, came down, and stayed with us all night. The head of the nurses union at the hospital and her husband came down and stayed with us all night and were constantly telling us what was happening and making sure everything was moving as quickly as it humanly could, et cetera, and so forth. And then we couldn't get into the ICU at the hospital we needed to go to. And we were fighting that. The hospital staff was helping us. The staff at the other hospital was desperately trying to get this bed free and figure out how they could move patients and who were also in just as critical shape or more critical shape than Annie, and it was looking like it couldn't be done. And then Dr. Miles, you got an email from a fan, and I got the same email. I didn't see it, of course, because I was at the hospital. You saw it. You thought to call me. And you said, you better call this guy. Dr.
Well, it's funny, Whitley, of all the, I get a lot of email, partner, a couple thousand a day, and for some reason, that one, it hit Ramona, and it hit me, and that's when I picked up the phone and said, you know what, you should call this guy.
Yeah, and you picked up the phone and said that just at the point when we needed it, because I called him. He turned out to be a great guy, a very wired-in doctor. And we not only had a bed at one of these facilities that can do this, but also at another.
Wow.
Within a couple of minutes. And because and the bed that we got was, it was just, things like that happened and have been happening all week. And there is a higher power there that is at once teaching us, accepting the fact that we are living in a world that is governed by chance, and this is what we have here, and that can move in a majestically merciful way.
Well, I don't know. On the one hand, you say we have a world governed by chance, but then it seems as though you suggest intervention in chance is also possible, or is it?
That's what I think. I think it is.
Yeah, well, then it's not entirely random. There are forces, including our own brains, or God, as petitioned by our brains, who can change the outcome of things. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it all out, and I guess that's the great mystery we're supposed to keep. Yeah. Listen, originally a week ago, before the tragedy hit, you were due to come on here and talk a little bit about something pretty strange, and it's what, weird animal? Do you have a chance, a second, to talk about this thing?
I'd love to talk about it. I would love nothing better, because to step away from the hospital for a moment. Right now, my wife is in superbly skillful hands, and there's nothing, as the doctors have said to me and to Andrew, guys, you feel like you need to be in control. You don't. You wouldn't want to fly the plane if you were a passenger. You wouldn't want to get in the pilot's seat, would you?
Well, you've probably been, at the hospital virtually for a week or something?
Oh, yeah, we're at the hospital most of the time, we're right at the other end of the phone. We're 10 minutes away from the hospital, and yes, I would like to very much talk about some of the fascinating stuff that's going on. This stuff, we had, back in May, a rancher in South Texas shot this strange animal. And it's unfortunate. I mean,
Is this the one called the Elmendorf beast?
Yeah, the Elmendorf beast. And, the Texan rancher, Texas, going to shoot first and then try to figure out what he did. I sympathize with everybody who's written me emails saying, they should try not to shoot them and they should trap them. And I agree. But
and that's in Texas, Yeah, right. It's Texas. All right, Whitley, hold tight. We're at the bottom of the hour, and we will come back and talk about this Elmendorf beast. Half the people call it that, half call it a chupacabra. And I wonder if there's any there were those canine teeth in the picture of this beast were gigantic. And you can see why it might have led to rumors about the chupacabra. I'm Art Bell. Something strange is going on the sun. It really is. Over the last, I'm going to say almost 3 weeks now, the shortwave bands have been acting very strangely. I mean, really strangely. About 3 weeks now, I think. Anyway, it's still going on now. And I watch solar conditions. I'm very interested. And some of you who listen to a local station, and you're 50 or 60 or 100 miles from that station might want to comment to me by email or fast blast. But a lot of the AM stations you would normally hear are perhaps right now not being heard very well. And there's a reason for that. I was looking at the sun, and I brought up a picture of the sun taken by the satellite that we've got out 1 million miles, and it was blank. The sun was blank. The sun is always, to some degree or another, peppered with sunspots, but this time when I looked, the sun was blank, and sure enough, here comes the following story from NASA, dated October 18th. Something strange happened on the sun last week. All the sunspots vanished. This is a sign, say forecasters, that solar minimum is coming sooner than expected. And it has had certainly a bizarre effect on the shortwave bands, and to some degree, I would think on the broadcast band as well. So if you're, 40 or 50 miles, 60, 100, whatever, from a station you normally listen to, I wonder if you have noticed that in the last 3 weeks, unexpected dropouts in reception have occurred. With that said, Whitley Strieber back in a moment, and we'll talk of the Elmendorf beast. Once again, my good friend Whitley Strieber. All right, the Elmendorf beast. A lot of people may not be. A lot in this audience would have gone either to my website or yours, and probably seen photographs of this thing.
Indeed, they could go to my website and do that now.
You've got one up there now, right?
Yeah, the story is right up at the top of the website. If you go to Unknown Country, the first story you will see is Elmendorf Creature DNA, a puzzle.
Oh, okay. That's unknowncountry.com, folks.
Right.
And now, so that's a big story. When you get down to DNA and they can't figure it out, what happened?
Well, here's what happened. We have had the DNA from the Elmendorf animal under study at a laboratory, one of the best in the world for this type of thing, for about 7 or 8 weeks. And it's been so long because all they can tell about this DNA is that it is an animal that is definitely canine it's a canine of some kind.
Some kind.
Yeah,
but not a dog. Not the DNA says it's not.
Well, it's not a normal dog. It is. There have been some speculation that it might be a Peruvian type of Peruvian dog, but we just finished looking into that, and it's absolutely different. And so far, none of the biologists who've seen it can really understand the canine, the teeth. When you look at the story, you'll see that the veterinary worker who took these pictures of this animal, and now this is not in Elmendorf, this is in Lufkin, Texas, 300 miles from Elmendorf, where another one was shot about 2 weeks ago.
Another one?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
And there's a third one there. They definitely, it was seen, a living one was seen there. as well by the same veterinary person who is, incidentally, by the way, if you subscribe, if you're a subscriber to my website, you can listen to an interview with her, which I did last week. It seems like a million years ago, but describing, seeing this other creature and then going to this one and picking up the remains. And the creatures there are certain things about them that are very strange. But let me get back to the DNA.
Right.
The DNA is not really identifiable in detail, and because it has been it's been deteriorated by something like a lot of heat or radiation or high light. It's not in very good shape at all. Why that would be is a mystery, but there's something just profoundly wrong with these animals. For example, in both cases, when the animals were shot, they did not bleed.
Oh, that's really weird.
It's really weird, and we don't know why that would be. In fact, the first man in Elmendorf who shot the animal thought he hadn't hit it because the bullets just went in and there was no blood at all. Now, within an hour, the veterinary worker got to the one in Lufkin within an hour and found that it was already, its ears were friable. In other words, they would crumble when at touch.
How could that possibly be?
Well, I don't know. It's as I say, it's very mysterious.
The process of decomposition may be fast, but it's not that fast.
No, it's not. And we really, there's a lot of...
You actually mean you could touch the ear and it would crumble like a dry leaf?
Like a dry leaf, yeah, that would be correct. Not that completely, but it would crumble away under your fingers.
Oh, my God.
And so what that may mean is anybody's guess. But this really is one of the strangest biological mysteries that's come along in quite a while. Now, here's another bizarre part of it. One of the things that's destroying everybody is that these large canines, if you look at the picture there...
Oh, yeah, I saw them.
And now I'm going to put another story up just as we're talking. A picture, if you look at that picture and you see those big canines, the lower one, that isn't something a dog has the genetic encoding to create. That dogs don't have teeth like that. And in fact, they're not really those exaggerated incisors coming up out of the lower jaw aren't something that you see in mammals at all.
Okay, well, I was going to say at first, maybe we're dealing with a mutation, but doesn't that seem awfully less likely now that there have been, 3?
Well, it's always possible that it's a mutation. And, but it's certainly not a deformity. It certainly is, no question, a mutation, not a deformity. And
could it be evolution? Could something have simply evolved?
It's going in a good direction because nobody has looked at the skull. None of the professionals have looked at the skull, and there's the photographs are now going around to the whole biological community in this country and probably abroad as well. Everybody's looking at this animal right now. So if it can be identified, it will be. But the problem is that the ones who have seen the actual skulls, you can't figure out how it would work how the teeth would work. It doesn't look like it could do anything. In other words, it doesn't look like something it looks like something that kind of looks scary but couldn't actually eat anything much.
Hey, Whitley, I wonder if this thing came out of a lab.
Look, I'll tell you what I think it is, and this is my own personal opinion. I think some evil, thoughtless swine has created these creatures to make something that looks like a chupacabra in order to scare people. And I have to tell you that there are a number of places in Texas, universities that have very advanced biological sciences laboratories where somebody who was really, really smart and really twisted could have done something like this
Well, there are a lot of smart, twisted people out there, you know.
At a stretch. I've talked to some specialists about that, and nobody feels it would really be possible to do on the one hand. On the other hand, the animals have got things wrong with them. They seem to be, from the observations, the credible observations we've received, the animals seem to grow to a certain age and then deteriorate and get this kind of disease that causes, it's not sarcoptic mange, we know that.
Wasn't that a side effect of cloning? I remember that.
Yeah, exactly. It has the look of a disease that's of a genetic disease, and that's why I think that this is a designer animal, and I think somebody, you know, this is a funny world we live in. I don't think there's any law against doing what this is, but I think there should be. And
would have been the next words out of my mouth. Should be.
Yeah.
Just turn loose a new animal on the world that's not equipped to handle the world.
Right, and turn loose just to let them suffer and die. It's horrible.
Well, okay, that's one very strong.
They have big teeth. They're supposed to be scary. It's disgusting.
Okay, that's one very strong possibility. A mutation, I suppose, might be another, but you wouldn't think three of them. Are there any other possibilities?
None that I could understand. I mean, God knows if it has something to do with parallel universes or aliens or something like that. I have no idea. That's out of my bailiwick in a sense, but the possibilities I can conceive of are, this is in fact an animal that exists somewhere in the world. It's somehow gotten into South Texas, and we'll find out what it is eventually. Or it is a designer animal, which is what I think that somebody should be punished for having created. Or it is a mutation that is not a viable mutation and that it's going to die out very quickly.
Well, it's all strange. I mean, to think somebody in a lab somewhere.
You're talking about a cryptozoological gold mine. I mean, we've been looking for 50 years for Bigfoot, and this baby just walked into the backyard.
Yeah. All of a sudden. It's too weird.
Right. And when you click on that story on my website, that's the lead right now, down at the bottom, you will find links to another Elmendorf beast story. Click on that, and I'll try to get this fixed up so it's easier to do, and you can get this whole page of pictures of this thing.
All of this in Texas so far?
No. We have credible reports from California and a possible report from Maryland.
Maryland.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another thing. There was a photograph taken some years ago by some people who were near the old Nids Ranch. That it was a very, very hard to make out in the distance, but it could have been an animal like this.
Oh, I want to ask you a question. You mentioned the Nids Ranch, right?
Yeah.
That's a ranch that Mr. Bigelow, Robert Bigelow, purchased because there were so many unexplained things going on this ranch. Some really wild stuff happened on that ranch.
Yeah.
There was just a notice from NIDS that they're closing down investigative operations and laying some people off because they say nothing has happened basically in 2.5 years. It's a very strange announcement. And had you heard about that? I
had heard about that, and with my experience with this stuff is you have to be really patient and you have to be really careful, but it's unfortunate that they're closing down just when something sure as heck did happen. That
well,
they could put their fingers on.
Yeah, they could be all over this DNA thing.
Right. And as far as the extraordinary events that used to happen up on that ranch, whatever that is highly intelligent. I don't know whatever makes crop circles and makes those lights and things is extremely intelligent, and it's going to come when it wants to come and do what it wants to do. And So if it didn't show up after they bought the ranch, means that for whatever reason it does not want to go in that direction.
Well, some very dramatic events did occur early on, but they're saying...
That's true. Right early on they did. That's right.
But remember now, NIDS not only investigates very closely that ranch since they purchased it, but, had a nationwide effort, and they're virtually... not entirely closing down, but saying not enough has happened. We're not going to keep these personnel on staff. And I thought that was very strange and still do. Anyway, that's the latest on NIDS. I wasn't sure with what's going on, whether you'd heard about it. Obviously you have.
Yeah, well, we do a lot of work like NIDS did. We're on a much smaller budget, but we don't have any intention of going anywhere. We'll stay with it because, no matter what happens here, this website's got a lot of depth in terms of personnel, and it's going to keep going. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are fans of Dreamland, William Henry is going to be doing Dreamland, and he's got up this week. He's got an interview with Zechariah Sitchin about his new book, which is an incredibly cool interview because it's something. William Henry has so much knowledge of this stuff.
Indeed.
And it's a great interview.
All right.
I'm going to be continuing to interview people in the subscriber section. Now that'll be up every week also.
Well, I'm assuming for now you've suspended operations while you're at the hospital.
No. There are other people doing it. The website is still going.
No, I meant no. I just meant you.
I have.
Yeah.
Forget it. Forget it. We're out, and I am out of the picture. But the store is still working. The subscriber section is still going. The new Dreamlands will continue to go up every week. It's not going to stop just because we're having trouble. There's too many people involved in it for that.
Gotcha.
As I say, there's a lot of depth to it.
Well, hopefully Annie will be back at it soon.
Oh, Art, and folks, please pray with us. Pray always with the joy in your heart that prayer brings, and that we may, by the grace of God, come back.
I will so pray. And
we also, please remember, folks, we'll remember all of you in our prayers.
All right, Whitley Strieber. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for the update. Thanks for the information on this beast. And if anything breaks through tomorrow or even through the week, get the information to the Coast listeners, if you would, please.
I will do that for sure.
Take care, my friend. Talk to you shortly.
Bye.
Bye. That's Whitley Strieber. And Whit and I have been very close for a lot of years. And so there's an update on Ann. Now, in the world right now, Democrat John Kerry sought to undercut President Bush on national security Saturday by charging that he was trying to scare voters with talk of terrorism. Bush portrayed his opponent as indecisive and suffering from, quote, election amnesia, end quote, with conflicting stands on Iraq. And speaking of Iraq, suicide bombers struck Iraqi security targets Saturday north and west of Baghdad, killed 22 Iraqis. 6 U.S. soldiers were wounded in an ambush on the road to Baghdad airport. So it continues as usual in Iraq. A Soyuz capsule carrying a U.S.-Russian crew back to Earth following 6 months at the International Space Station hurtled through the Earth's atmosphere and then landed safely on target in Kazakhstan. So they're back home after 6 months circling the globe. You know about Japan, right? After just suffering a terrible typhoon, a series of powerful earthquakes and aftershocks rattled northern Japan Saturday, killed at least 15 people and injured more than 700 as buildings just, flat came apart. A bullet train, one of the bullet trains they have in Japan, derailed and roadways were torn apart. At least 10 people were still missing tonight. Throughout the region, electric, gas, and telephone services were knocked out and water and sewage mains burst. Well, listen. How many of you watched, I'm not normally a baseball fan. It's a slow-paced game, but I must admit I got very excited watching Boston pull off the impossible. In fact, I've got a story about that coming up. We won't have time for it tonight. In fact, coming up in the next hour is J.J. Hurtak, the keys of Enoch Hurtak. So we're going to be doing that through the evening. But I will tell you that baseball story. From the high desert in the middle of the dark nights, I'm Art Bell. Happy weekend, everybody. Coming up now, J.J. Hurtak, Ph.D., is the founder and president of the Academy for Future Science. He is a social scientist and scholar who has written, translated, and published over 15 books, including the Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch, as well as commentaries on the ancient Coptic texts illustrating Jesus' work, and especially involving the lost scriptures being found in the Middle East. Dr. Hurtak is also an anthropologist, archaeologist, and was instrumental in finding the so-called Osiris tomb in Egypt through remote sensing. Now, just a short overview on his book, The Book of Knowledge. The Keys of... See if you can understand all of this. The Keys of Enoch has been called a great synthesis, a paraphysical textbook in poetic, meta-scientific prose, preparing the human race to see the human evolutionary track as part of a greater story of life in the universe, whereby we eventually meet with and work with our cosmic counterparts. What does this mean for religion and science? The book touches upon topics from parapsychology and archaeology to astronomy and nuclear physics, explaining the larger picture that places us in the midst of many realms of intelligence in the universe, and explaining how and why. Well, basically, boiled down to simpler language, we're getting ready to meet the others. I think that's what it boils down to. At any rate, we'll find out in a moment. By the way, if we can arrange it telephone-wise, and it's always kind of a chore. Desiree Hurtak, that would be JJ's wife, will join us halfway through, I hope, with the phone system here, and be able to answer some questions. In the meantime, here is Dr. Hurtak. Doctor, welcome.
Thank you so much, Art, and our audience. We send also to Ann Strieber our condolences, our strength, our prayers for a great recovery, and we just want you in the audience to know that we've been saying prayers from our little area here in California. This is an amazing team. Whitley and his wife, and my wife and I know what it means to be a team, and this is a very important transition we're all going through, so we're nip and tuck in the situation.
Well, thank you. And Whitley and Ann are so close. We're so close with them. It hit us pretty hard. You know, maybe that's not a bad place to start. You know, we've been tossing around this whole power of prayer business. Now, I had a skeptic on the program last week, and he scoffed at the reports of double-blind studies. You know, that's pretty good scientific stuff. They've done these incredible double-blind studies where it is proven scientifically that prayer works. Now, we don't know why exactly, and we don't know how, certainly, but it does work. I'm satisfied scientifically that it works. Do you have any thoughts on all of that?
Yes, I do. I want to say at the outset that I would like to dedicate our program tonight to my late colleague, John Mack. And John Mack was really at the foreground of looking at distant mental influences in communication, and came to realize through his own unique experiences that the power of the mind has tremendous abilities, including distant healing. We worked on a project with the late Dr. Elizabeth Targ, who also, with her colleagues, showed tremendous contributions to science and human interactions through the power of prayer.
What a loss, Dr. Mack, what a loss. So, how much have you proven to yourself, Doctor, about the reality of this prayer, this whole thing about prayer?
Well, we know from the work of William Broad and others who've been involved in putting together the database of hundreds and hundreds of cases that the potential of the mind is enormous. The studies at Princeton University and other studies that are being carried on by Gary Schwartz at the University of Arizona are just the tip of an iceberg. We are beginning to see through higher mathematical models that Elizabeth Rausch and others are coming up with that certain areas of the mental network that are normally blocked can uniquely be opened or released through the energy field around the body. And if we can tap into higher energy levels, some would say these are axiotonal, to use a term that was my book of knowledge, Keys of Enoch, that Eric Pearl has made famous. If we can see our body as a cosmic antenna, we can pull an energy from the surrounding universe and target individuals at a great distance or at a local distance. And in some instances, if there is purity of thought, humility of the patient and the person sending and receiving the signals, miracles can take place.
Is this going to, do you think eventually science is going to meet up with all of this in the quantum world, Doctor?
Unquestionably, we're very, very close to this whole quantum move forward across the board, from breakthroughs in medicine that the Russians are doing to breakthroughs through remote viewing that the parapsychologists such as Russell Targ and Harold Puthoff and others are doing, to research in the physical sciences towards a new physics of consciousness. All of this is going to bring us into a whole new chapter of a new beingness, that we are essentially no longer constrained by the old models or paradigms of limitation, that we are essentially are cosmic beings. We have a passport to the cosmos in the very essence of our inner nature. By being free and liberated from three-dimensional forms of thought that are too restrictive, too dualistic, and too localized, we can go into timeless awareness. We can really enter into a whole new level of existence.
Well, could you remind my audience, you had something to do with finding the Osiris tomb in Egypt through remote sensing. How did you come to even consider trying to do that, and then how did you in fact do it, and how was it proven?
Well, first of all, let me take the audience back to the experience I had in January of 1973, where at a moment of bringing together different techniques of meditation from the Eastern schools of thought, that is to say the Buddhistic, the Tibetan, the Chinese, with the Western schools of thought, that is to say mystical, Christianity, Judaism, and the other traditions, I came across a unique way of invoking energy and opening a morphological door where I momentarily stepped into a higher level of awareness and experience. And I realized through mental pictures I call scenario abstracts that the mind could make contact with objects not only on any point of our planet but also in distant levels of the cosmos, and bringing into fruition some of the models. I put together a world grid of previous levels of proto-communication or earlier civilization, one of which was in Egypt. And going backwards in time, I visualized the area of the pyramids, the classical area we commonly refer to as the Great Pyramid of Giza, with structures underneath the Giza Plateau, and carefully looking at the models with the various layerings of what I filtered or saw deep beneath the earth. I saw a series of intersecting passageways and tombs. Now, the rational mind obviously rejected this in 1973 when I had the initial experience, but I did not logically consider that other things would come into play, so that by the mid-90s I would be working with geologists, archaeologists, who would have, in addition to remote viewing, the ability to use actual tools of remote sensing, that is to say, tools that could penetrate beneath the sands of Egypt and validate artifacts that could be found.
So they use earth-penetrating
radar, or ground-penetrating radar, GPR, as it's called.
Uh-huh. And when they were using that, they confirmed what you had seen. How had you recorded what you had seen? In what way, at the time you saw all this? Had you documented it?
I made basic schematics or line drawings, and then I shared this with colleagues, and having the opportunity to work some 30 to 33 meters down beneath the fans of Giza, I was able to physically take pictures in the initial phase of uncovering this particular object called the lid of the Osiris tomb.
Doctor, as the physical reality began to sink in when you were in Egypt, I mean, you realized, there must have been that instant when you realized, oh my God, I really saw it, because here it is. I mean, there must have been that instant.
Yes, there was a great enthusiasm that 24 years after the initial prior visual model, there was the physical confirmation that I could reach out and touch. You might call this the epiphany experience, where you suddenly see things falling into place.
I'm sure it was. So, as it went on, you must have just, I mean, there must have been that physical instant when you went, wow. Did you ever, until the physical discovery, Doctor, did you ever doubt what would be found, or doubt that you had seen anything that was other than something generated by your synapses in your imagination?
Well, this is crossing the synaptic gap. The logical, rational part of my training and background said no, there was no such thing as distant mental influence that could conjure up pictures that would have ground truth or could be probed by independent individuals and correlated to a point of achieving here confirmation. On the other hand, because of my experience of stepping into a higher dimensional frequency, I realized that the human race was now being prepared for a great change coming. This is the quickening that you speak of. It's on page 1 of my book, the Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch, that this teaching is multi-level and doesn't make any sense to the rational mind that is dualistic and boxed in by 3 dimensions. But the person who is willing to use the key to open up the door to the other dimensions or multidimensional reality lets go of the bias and the restrictiveness, and suddenly he or she begins to swim in hyperspace. And this is exactly what I did. And I put together a map of 12 areas throughout the world, like the Great Pyramid of Egypt, where there would be confirmation. Another area was Yonaguni off of Taiwan, which, as you know, was probed by the Japanese in the mid-90s.
Oh, yes.
I was asked to be part of the expedition because one of the mathematical models I put together was there also with Robert Schoch. And more recent evidence by the Taiwanese on their side of the South China Sea has shown that this is a much larger area of underwater artifacts. This, again, is a wonderful confirmation of the model in my book, which I call Key 215, of these 12 areas of early civilization.
Doctor, what do you think they're looking at Yonaguni? What are they seeing? Are they seeing something how old? A civilization that existed when?
A civilization that apparently was there at the end of the last ice age, somewhere between 7,000 and 12,000 years ago, when the oceans were much lower. We know from others on the Japanese side and the Australian side, and more recently Graham Hancock, that there were at least 4 different locations that show what is called turtle-shaped platforms or constructs, landforms that were shaped through a type of what we will call terraforming into the shape of a turtle shell. The turtle is very sacred to the Japanese, to the Oriental peoples, also to the North American and South American Indians, as being the model of our planet. It represents a basic model of how creation works on the foundations of life. The Mayans speak about the turtle shell related to Orion, the North American Indians, also in like measure. We found at 4 different locations these platforms with turtle shells, suggesting that this had to be the work of some very elaborate human civil engineers, artisans, scholars who knew exactly how to put these shapes to work sociologically, as well as in certain relationships to higher teaching of cosmology and astronomy.
I would like to know how to grab the key and to experience what you've been talking about. I would like myself, and I'm sure the audience would, to know how to get to a state in which you enter something that is not controlled by space and time. And that is right, isn't it? Time also is eclipsed. There's not much difference between the past and what's happening now and the future. It's all, there's not time as we know it.
Right. The ability to step out of time-space or space-time.
Yes.
That ability is really the great challenge. I and my wife have had to put together video graphics and documentaries to go with this book so it can be experienced, to use the same expression, swimming in hyperspace. The whole idea of being submerged into the deeper aspect of the symbol of what is being discussed here requires that we actually visualize, in this case, the waters of Yonaguni, the ability to go underneath the ocean, to actually visualize from an omnidirectionality all sides of the object and have the experience of being there like the artisan or like the person who created it.
Well, what I'm talking about, though, is how does one enter the state where they can even begin to make those visualizations? Are there words that you can use on the radio that describes how you get into that state?
Words are basically energy mantrams, energy affirmations, energy expressions that go with remote viewing experiences. In other words, what I'm saying, the other part of the experience of the cosmic antenna is that the vibratory levels that are built into us that we don't use. What I'm saying is there's a connection between vibration, frequency, and form. We have to start not only to think outside the box, but to vibrate out of the box. And if we can make the link between vibration, frequency, and form, the effect of the vibrations on the physical world surrounding us cause rhythmic patterns not only to emerge, but certain associations of our thoughts, our energies, and as they go out, make different points of contact.
All right. The vibration part of it makes sense to me. Remember, you're talking to lay people here. I think that occasionally when we begin to, it sounds silly, I know, but vibrate at a different level. For example, if you sit in front of a monitor and you watch a monitor, an LCD monitor, for example, or whatever, even a regular monitor, actually really a regular monitor, you begin, that's coming at you at 50 or 60 hertz or whatever it is. And after a while, you begin to see, it seems like you get in sync with it. And there are people who say that people have short lapses where after sitting in front of a monitor for a very long period of time, they can occasionally see things out of the corners of their eyes and see movement that they don't associate with their present reality, as though it's putting them in some sort of slightly different state. Does that sound logical to you?
It does. It does. And what you're saying here is that there's a liberating influence that takes place in these higher states.
Well, it's a change. I don't know. Liberating, maybe. Perhaps so. But a change, definitely. Something that changes.
What we found consistent in all of the places where we looked in the world, from Japan and China with the Great Pyramids in the areas of northern China to those in South America and Yucatan, is that there are correlations between form, mathematics, and harmonics, and if we can create the right harmonic set and step into that, things in a very unique way come together.
Okay,
the solar frequencies, according to what I was experiencing in 1973, trap us into a certain resonant state, and if we can go beyond the solar frequencies, if we can go beyond where we are in the spectrum into a higher level, things begin to happen.
All right, hold it right there. Yeah, things do begin to happen. In the nighttime, talking about matters of the mind, I'm Art Bell. And Dr. J.J. Hurtak is my guest. Now, it's beginning to happen. Don't you sense it? The theoretical physicists like Dr. Kaku, that so many respect, are absolutely talking about the fact that there's not just our dimension. There are perhaps 11, if not more, dimensions out there. That's the physicists, right? And then we have people like Dr. Hurtak who are talking about changing vibrational states and access, in essence, I think, to those other universes. And then we have science bearing down on this quantum ability, which would seem to transfer through and to those universes. The quantum thing being where two things can actually be viewed, for example, doing the same thing 5 million miles apart, things that have been once connected, whether it would be a couple of drops of water, a couple of plants, two animals, two humans, or even a human and a thing. It's pretty bizarre, and I know it's difficult for the brain to assimilate all of this, but it's what we're talking about tonight, and it's what we were talking about a little while ago with the example of the computer monitor that gets your brain after a while in sync with a different vibrational rate. I've had so many reports of people who have seen things that they cannot account for after being accustomed to these vibrational rates. So, it's kind of all coming together, and there really is something to all of this, so you should listen carefully tonight. Once again, Dr. Hurtak. Doctor, welcome back.
Thank you.
Doctor, are there extraterrestrials?
Yes, not only extraterrestrials, but ultra-terrestrials. And my follow-up to your model there is with the expansion of consciousness, there are these higher vibratory states that are not within the conventional electromagnetic spectrum or the material world that we tap into. And if we reach the right resonance, we can actually see these forms momentarily. Sometimes these are called light beings or spirit guides or other levels of meta-intelligence, but they're there, and they do exist within a unique reality of their own.
All right. We're saying the word extraterrestrials. Is that perhaps not accurate? I mean, when the audience thinks of E.T., they think of from another physical star system somewhere, some other planet. Is that necessarily so? Or
in conventional terminology that Alan Hynek and the classical experts, ET would be in some other part of the universe or planetary system apart from our Mother Earth. And the Spielberg film Close Encounters of the Third Kind closes with that amazing scene of trying to send out musical signals or vibrations to make contact with the ET.
That's right.
Who uses a different syntax, namely a language that transcends what we normally use or think of.
Universal.
Right.
Music is math, and that's universal.
Right. Now, I've been working with the signals of music, not only with land targets throughout the world with the use of remote sensing and remote viewing, but also with off-planetary intelligence. And in the process of our work, we've actually been able to map out some of the signal ranges of other life systems, of which we've cataloged more than 57 of these so-called ETs, or extraterrestrial civilizations.
All right. Again, my question, are these beings, you believe, on other planets, in other star systems, or are they in the same physical plane with us, but another dimension? That's what I'm trying to get clear.
In your use of the terminology, they're different from those in our same dimension, which I call meta-terrestrials as opposed to extraterrestrials. Extraterrestrials are those outside of our planetary system.
But through a changing vibrational level, you're able to reach both?
Yes.
Boy, it must be confusing, differentiating, understanding what you're in communication with. How do you do that?
Well, this is the whole challenge of life and why you have eyes to see, you have other areas of identification to correlate with the entities or the life forms that you're making contact with. We're working, my colleagues and I, with the cosmic syntax to try to put face and life form together with the language or the vibrations that we associate with these different life forms. In my experience, I saw a vast universe of which there were literally scores of different levels of intelligence, all operating on a different frequency. And my work has been to try to put the cosmic syntax together.
What is the nature of the communication that you do have, for example? Just give me an example. With a species, are you able to interact? Are you able to ask questions? Are you simply able to discern? I'm trying to understand the nature of the communication that you receive.
Well, let's start with square one. Some time after my experience, I worked with my late colleague, Dr. Andrei Puharich, who was a noted paraphysicist, and using a Faraday cage, which is a special room that's shielded from electromagnetic static and interference, we were able to establish communications between alleged ET sources and mental sensitives who were inside the Faraday cage and map out through truth tables and through various questions certain responses and gradually build a database suggesting that there were some levels of intelligence that could be called trickster or definitely not true, not correct in their assertions, and those who were logical, correct, and did want to help us with information that could be correlated outside the Faraday cage.
Okay, that's a lot. The Faraday cage would block out all the frequencies we understand that humans communicate with, right? It blocks out radio signals. It blocks out virtually everything in the electromagnetic spectrum, right?
Yes.
And so then it's more than an assumption that this communication takes place way outside that range somewhere.
Right. And the trick is here not to be, shall we say, limited by certain assumptions that the thread of consciousness coming in from some unknown source has to fall within a certain logic context of language as we know language, or musical experience as we know musical experience. What we found out is there's a type of consciousness that erupts, that breaks out, offering possibilities of matching the sensory input within one's experiment with the outer reality.
Okay, does this provide for the person doing it? Is there some way you can put words to this? I mean, are they seeing a picture? Are they having a live communication? Are they... I'm trying to put together in my mind the way the communication or the understanding comes to them that allows such a detailed, I mean, you're talking about, 37 different life forms of some sort or another?
At least. With mental sensitives, or what we would call those who are gifted with mind over matter signal ranges, there are mental pictures that come in.
Okay.
And those pictures are correlated over a period of time, over a period of sessions, and then some unique branch of or methodology of science falls into place, whether it's linguistic, neurolinguistic, whether it's musical or paraphysical, connected with musical. Again, this is a very difficult area to work with because, again, we're working with so many levels of experimental situations that may not prove valid.
You said that some number of them were tricksters, and when you say something like that, you're believe me, the ears of the very religious out there perk right up, and they say, of course, you're communicating with common language, some of the darker forces, some of the darker entities, right?
Right, and I think this is why the powers that be have been very reluctant to go forward with the release of information on this whole question of ET presence, is because we have so many different categories. You can imagine 57 varieties showing up on our doorstep. You know, the question is who has the right formula, who has the right handshake, you know, who has the right ability to brief and to announce, as it were, the message of contact and communication to the world. This has been really the whole problem that we've been facing. I had the good fortune in Argentina some years ago and in Mexico to be at a communication tower where the ETs were communicating through voice computer in a variety of languages, and I was able to turn over to our government examples of some of the signals of ET speaking simultaneously in English, Spanish, and German.
And do you recall the text? What was said?
I briefly recall the text that we were being watched as a planetary society, that we were taking a technological slide towards self-destruction, and that we were being warned in a variety of ways that we were to put away our weapons of destruction.
Then, boy, are we on the wrong path.
I had an interview with Novedades, which is a well-known newspaper in Mexico City, November 26, 1977, where I was interviewed, and I explained to the critical press that we would have contact showing the ability of ETs to reach out to us through a variety of ways. And during that time period, the BBC was intercepted. The radio network in London was turned off for 5 minutes for reasons that could not be explained. And the next day, November 27th, the Novedades newspaper carried the story that their radio system had been interrupted, and his voice had said, "Put away your weapons of destruction. The time to live together in peace is short."
Wow.
Essentially, he was repeating what I had told the journalist in Mexico City the day before. And that was happening at a time that the president of Israel was visiting the president of Mexico, and a spacecraft had actually come down. I am in the area of the pyramids of Mexico.
Doctor, back just one little bit. You're saying this message appeared on all of BBC?
That's right.
Well, you know what? I never heard about that.
I'm not saying globally. I'm speaking of Greater London.
Well, that's fine. Greater London is a lot. And all of BBC in Greater London was interrupted for 5 minutes, and this message was heard by millions?
It was heard by millions in the area of Greater London.
You would think something like that would be big headline.
The date was November 27th, 1977. It's carried on page 2 of Novedades, which is like the New York Times of Mexico City.
Right.
And if you have to compare that page with page 1 of November 26th to see the import, in fact, a famous periodical in Mexico City called Super Machos in February of 1978 carried a lead story in which I was compared to James Bond having the ability to send out and receive signals of mind over matter. The periodical was a satire on people not looking at the data only because the ETs don't look like humans and don't communicate like humans. Therefore, the story was essentially going unnoticed. But several of the paraphysicists and journalists did pick up on the story, and it did receive wide attention.
And well, it should have. Of the Heinz 57 that you're talking about, can you give us a sense of, this might seem like a strange question, but it's been one of concern for me. How many percentage-wise have our best interests in mind versus how many of these different species might not regard us well, or from our perspective, they might not ultimately treat us well or be our friends?
That's a very difficult question to answer in terms of what percentage would be on one side of the fence, the benign, those that would be positive as opposed to the non-benign.
Yes.
But I would say upwards of 20% would be non-benign. The majority are, fortunately, and we live in the troublesome part of the universe. The waters are rather turbulent, and this is why we must think outside the box. And again, to go back to your example last week with the children in Africa.
Oh, yes.
That in order to understand that reality of the children seeing things and experiencing things that their parents could not understand, they had to go outside the box and think in mental pictures and explain the vibrations of the beings, speaking of children in Zimbabwe, Southern Africa. Now, Dr. Mack and I did go to South Africa. We had experiences of talking to the children, to lecturing to the medical faculty in Johannesburg.
Oh, listen, I so much want to hear about this. I was startled by the story. I don't know why I hadn't been previous to that familiar with the story, but it hit me like a brick. For this many children to go just wander off into the forest, have a close encounter of the third kind, and receive a message. And I was blown away by the story. I mean, how many of these, you interviewed them, so that makes you a very valuable resource. What were these children like, and what did they say?
Essentially, the children spoke of the beings as being playful, having the ability to violate the laws of physics as we know them by simply moving very quickly across the field, where they interacted with these children who were of all backgrounds, all cultures,
right,
and who were aware that something unusual was taking place. I think the bigger story was the children were being reached in that part of Africa at the same time over across the ocean in Mexico. Another experience took place that was identical, that a journalistic specialist by the name of Jaime Masson,
I know him,
had also documented, and a young woman by the name of Sarah Cuevas was interviewed on Televisa, and I know this story also quite well. Had seen unusual activity in her backyard, and she had a camera. She was able to take some video of this, and when it turned out there was a central vehicle, and then there were smaller vehicles that were networked or aligned with the mother vehicle. The being showed the dexterity to levitate, to move very quickly, to emanate some type of bioluminescence, to have a light probe over the head, a light antenna. Sarah Cuevas, who was the principal contactee, was horrified. She thought this was a demonic form. In fact, she used the words to translate from the Spanish that this is the devil. And I'm not saying that this was not non-benign, but I'm saying that the psychological state of an adult as opposed to a child is the key factor here. The children in Southern Africa were somewhat bemused, somewhat taken back, and deeply touched by the experience, whereas the adult and the person I just described in Mexico City was taken back, shocked, because her psychology, her point of reference, her point of vibration was turned inward rather than outward.
All right. Hold it right there, Doctor. Dr. J.J. Hurtak is my guest. From the high deserts in the darkness, I'm Art Bell. God, maybe there's more here than meets the ear at first. There's a couple things that have happened that grab my attention. I'm a pretty hands-on guy, and words are one thing, but I'll tell you, I'm getting confirmations now from the audience all over the place on links to what happened in Great Britain, where the BBC got taken over in 1977. I'm getting links and offerings, and so it obviously really did happen. The BBC in London was taken over, and there was a message sent about us, about mankind. Now, more recently, in Mexico, 60 school children suddenly, for no apparent reason, walked off into the woods. And when they did, they had a close encounter of the third kind. And there was a message given about humanity in that incident as well. That's more recent, and I had just heard about that. Dr. Mack was involved, who is now passed on, tragically, as you know. But also in Africa with Dr. Mack was Dr. Hurtak. So he can tell us about this. I was afraid that with the passing of Dr. Mack, there would be, nothing, because these were incredible interviews in which the children independently verified a message they received during that contact. But now we have somebody who was also present and heard the interviews. Priceless. We'll be right back. All right, so we have the BBC. We have the children in Africa. We have another incident now in Mexico as well. All of these ostensibly delivering a message to mankind. Again, Dr. Hurtak, I really would like to know as many details as you can recall regarding the incident in Africa in the interviews. What can you tell me?
Well, first off, this happened September 16th, 1994. It was in this little country to the north, formerly known as Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, and it was in a schoolyard where children unsupervised saw other life forms. Basically,
about how many of them? Was it about 60?
Approximately 62 children were there at the time.
Okay.
John and I had the opportunity to talk upwards of as many there as possible, upwards of 50, plus some were somewhat guarded what they said. Obviously, the head constable of the school was a bit perplexed that so many of the students would come forth so readily and openly, unashamedly, and state for the record that they had seen other beings.
Well, this would be a life-altering experience. I mean, if I heard the story correctly, they not only saw other beings, but actually saw a ship as well, didn't they?
That's right. It was a large ship with smaller ships that were related to the larger ship. So it was like seeing a larger activity of multiple vehicles suddenly appear in your backyard. You can imagine how most people would feel. Their psychology would go out the window.
I guess some would feel compelled to talk about it. Some would be afraid to even recall the experience. I don't know. A variety of responses?
A variety of responses, young men and women of all races, and since it was a school for what I would call selective students who came from the wealthier segment of society.
Okay.
They were able to make drawings and sketches. Later, Cynthia Hine, who was connected as the MUFON representative of that country,
yes,
was able to detail these drawings independent of the investigations that John and I and others represented. I don't recall the actual name of the schoolmaster. I think his name was McKay. I'm not sure right now, but the point of it being is the schoolmaster's mindset could not relate to the activity that was seen by all of these children. They could see, they could observe. They came away with the sense that something more was in progress. In other words, that this event was instilled within their consciousness for other happenings that would take place in the future. Now, keep in mind that South Africa and Zimbabwe were going through this tremendous sociological upheaval.
Right. And
this was a time where people were looking for different areas of social identity, cross-cultural and cross-racial understanding. And out of this came a sense that there was something greater that was happening to planetary humanity.
The messages, if I recall correctly, were, again, quite specific, weren't they? There were some specific messages about humanity, right?
The messages that we were able to detail were that we, that is to say, the human race had to understand that we were being watched very, very carefully, and that things were going to move very, very quickly. The close encounters were important in that things would disappear and reappear suddenly in their midst. And so we have a situation, something that wasn't seen out of the corner of the eye,
right,
that was there, and then suddenly it would disappear like some type of short-lived drama, but something that was there in depth And
Doctor, how much similarity was there in the descriptions and or drawings the children did of the craft or the beings or whatever they drew? How many similarities were there?
quite a few, in the sense that the drawings showed Earth environmental situations, and the basic bottom line to all of this is we were destroying our environment. Things were moving very, very fast. We found the same situation with children I talked to in Mexico and also in the Amazon, where the children of the various indigenous people were crying. They were explaining that their whole habitat was being destroyed. Mother Earth was crying, and things were going to move very, very quickly if our consciousness and our awareness of our environment didn't change. Now, this was in 94, 10 years ago plus, and so we're really at a point of looking at some dramatic changes ahead. This is
believe me, Doctor, there's been a real quickening underway for some time now, and it's really of late accelerating in a way that even the average person is beginning to go, wow, look at what's going on around me. Some of what the scientists are reporting regarding our environment right now is, to anybody who really looks into it, absolutely amazing, but it's not so much a topic of general discussion or in the media that much, except perhaps in a macro sort of way every now and then. It's not a big topic.
Well, it's interesting that the name of the school was Ariel, A-R-I-E-L, which in the biblical sense is one of the angels of communication. So if you can look at this as a positive statement here in Africa as opposed to what happened in Mexico, at least the idea was if we can discern and listen to the children, become as soft and as sensitive and as pure of heart as they are, we will see that this drama that's going to unfold is going to affect all people, all races, regardless of where we find ourselves in the next few years. And this is what the Keys of Enoch speak about, the cosmic changes that are coming, both negative forms as well as positive forms of higher intelligence that require our discernment, that will come largely through the vibrations of our heartbeat, of love, compassion, and in the sense of paraphysics, the vibrations of music, harmony, and what Mother Nature is doing to show us that she is also in communication with us through these subtle sounds.
How many of these children, Doctor, were you part of interviewing?
I interviewed only a small number, approximately 12, 13, 14 children.
That's quite a few. That's quite a few. And I'd like to understand your impression after these interviews. Were you wondering in your own mind, could this have been some sort of mass hypnotic something or another, or did you come away from those interviews saying, wow, it really happened here, close encounter of the third type contact, and messages for Earth occurred at this place?
I came away feeling very strong in my heart that these children were telling their immediate community that they had to pay attention to the signals from upstairs or from other dimensional levels, that we as a humanity were being watched very carefully, and they, the children of the world, the next generation, would be the custodians of Mother Earth, and they had to bring this message out through us to the world. Now, Dr. Mack and I were able to speak on national television in South Africa, and some of this was conveyed. We had also the opportunity at several presentations at the United Nations also to bring out some of this with respect to other happenings we had monitored in other parts of the world. But essentially, we are part of a cosmic countdown where we have to filter very, very carefully the signals and experiences or happenings. They're clearly not of the human race, but in a very unique way connect us with the charter of the nations of our planet.
Doctor, does the year 2012 enter into any of this?
It definitely doesn't. If you follow the Mayan tradition with their clocks, with their time periods, I've had the opportunity to work in Mesoamerica recently with musicologists and specialists who work with energy harmonics of the pyramids and sacred temples there, and all of this points to changes that are going to manifest between this time period and what we will call the gateway period of 2012. I tend to look beyond this somewhat to later in that decade rather than in terms of a quick turnaround, but I do think that the documents are being correlated from all parts of the world, and what we are doing at the Academy for Future Science through music and harmonics, and the study of harmonics is building a syntax of what is being said to us through the various cultures and countries.
All right. This is going to seem like maybe a silly question, but if we're being watched by extraterrestrials, loose definition, and if the message is that we're in the middle of a cosmic countdown and that there's some real trouble directly ahead in the short range, which is what it seems to be saying, then why deliver this message to children in Africa, as impressive as that is, or break in on the BBC and demonstrate a message with virtually the same warning? Why do all of this when you could instead go directly to the world leaders, the people who make decisions, and have communication at that level?
Well, this is a very provocative question, and I would say, and I'm saying this very carefully, they have. I'm saying that several government leaders that I've talked to, who I cannot mention, several presidents, are knowledgeable of these contact experiences and are perplexed that the superpowers have not spoken openly on the seriousness of not only children being contacted, but others being contacted by non-benign intelligence and being used for experimental purposes.
Well, Doctor, Ronald Reagan, a man who I really loved, Ronald Reagan said several things during the course of his presidency that seemed at the time out of place and weird, referencing, the possibility of other civilizations and the possibility of having to, for example, unite against a common enemy that would come from elsewhere. I mean, he really did make these statements, and a lot of people were puzzled by them. I mean, he was a very conservative kind of guy, politically, not prone to saying the kinds of things that he said in this area. Would he be one of those people?
Yes, definitely. I worked on a book. Gordon Cooper was able to supply information for the book. Sidney Sheldon was the writer. It's called The Doomsday Conspiracy.
Oh.
And it lists high levels of contact. Obviously, this is in science fiction, but at the end of the book, I list the names of over 24 engineers who disappeared, who were involved in electronic warfare and mind over matter studies, who knew too much and for reasons not clear, simply met with early death or accidents. So there's clearly a dialectic, if I may use that term, a struggle going on behind the scenes as to those who see the higher side of the positive forces helping the human race survive this critical period, and there are those powers that look upon the human race as playthings or biological batteries to do as they wish. And this is why, again, we've had to be very, very careful in putting together the big picture. There's just too many unknowns, and this requires us to go back, as you pointed out, to the higher powers that we can invoke and call upon, such as the power of prayer, to discern, to filter those forms of intelligence that can help us, can ennoble us, can upgrade us, as opposed to those who would violate our free will.
You worked with Gordon Cooper, who
yes.
recently passed. And
in 1953, he told me of a series of remarkable events he saw in Germany, where large flotillas of spaceships were seen at altitudes that could not be reached by American military craft at that time. Now, the Russians were not able to match what we were doing. In 1953, the German Air Force had been destroyed. There was nothing that could match, really, the massive numbers of spacecraft that suddenly appeared in the sky that Gordon Cooper saw and bore witness to. Now, this is an American hero, a space pioneer.
That's right.
Who was willing to go to bat and give a testimonial to the United Nations and to me to publish regarding the fact that in the distant future, these things would open up for us to understand, but for the time being, we just have to be aware that there were things going on far beyond our ability to logically comprehend.
Well, if these messages are being delivered to certain world leaders, what's being done? I mean, how successful has that been? I mean, one might look around at the world right now and suggest the environment is going to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly, that what I've called the quickening is accelerating indeed on schedule, if not ahead of schedule, and it just doesn't seem to be going too well yet.
Well, the leaders that I've talked to have been overwhelmed. I'm not saying this in a polite sense of respecting those in authority, but when you are hit with a bucket of cement in the face, that there is something not only more advanced scientifically, but also has the ability to probe the mind and actually supercharge the DNA within the human body on multiple levels of sound, you're suddenly in a situation of being in a tight box. If you admit that they exist, then you lose sovereignty of your command structure.
That's true.
And if you admit that they do exist publicly, then the public, without the training, the orientation, the social preparation, tends to put a whole sense of either laughter or a sense of doubt in the air. And we know, for example, one government leader lost his position because he was willing to go public with this.
Can you name that person?
This was Sir Irigiri of Grenada, who was able to come to the United Nations, where he met with a group, Kurt Waldheim, and high leaders and scientists, and spoke privately regarding the importance to press on with this new area of science.
Indeed, impressive, but doggone it, Grenada. I mean, why not the White House? President Bush would be an ideal candidate. I mean, if President Bush, well, of course, it would probably be real trouble for the campaign. Let's say after he becomes reelected, if that happens, if he were to bring forth this message, I don't know. I can't even imagine.
Well, if I can use a witticism and a pun, if Bush becomes the burning bush, in other words, has the higher ability to see and to understand, I'm sure there are those more qualified than I to give him really the overall orientation. But what I'm saying in a practical way, the government of Brazil, the government of Mexico, the government of Spain that I know of have come forward. I've talked to the president, former president of Brazil, and others who have said in so many words that their military facilities were being monitored on a regular basis by flying elusive objects.
Hold it right there. That's pretty heavy stuff, all right. Spain, Mexico, we know they've had a lot of contact. Yeah, well, that certainly is true, isn't it? Dr. Hurtak is my guest. I'm Art Bell. I'm from the high desert, in the midst of the darkness of the night. Stick around and learn. It is true. And you've got to wonder about it a little bit. Quite a number of our astronauts, particularly our early astronauts, Gordon Cooper, Ed Mitchell, Dr. Mitchell comes to mind. Actually, a raft of them have said things that the average American would honestly regard as incredible, truly incredible, just out there. But these men are not just any men. These men are, the early right stuff guys. I mean, all the way around. You just can't imagine how much of the right stuff they had to have to participate in those programs. And to be saying some of the things that they're saying right now is just astounding to a lot of average folks, Dr. Hurtak.
Indeed. In fact, Ed Mitchell was just in London recently, where he made statements to the fact that things are moving ahead and a lot of new materials coming out. We also, through the Academy for Future Science in Mexico, we're part of some of the information regarding the remarkable events on March 5th, 2004, where Mexican aircraft were able to use high technology to track not 3, not 6, not 9, but 11 extraterrestrial spacecraft.
Wow. Do you know to what degree they track them? I mean, they were getting radar returns on that number, or tracking in what manner?
Well, they were using forward-looking infrared radar, FLIR.
Right, I'm familiar with it.
And actually, the situation is somewhat complicated by what information is sensitive and what is not. But the aircraft, the Mexican aircraft, was equipped with conventional and infrared radars. It was confirmed by the aircraft audio recording that both radars acquired the same target at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
A redundancy confirmation of the presence of the unidentified flying spheres or objects that take place on several levels. Some of the information went to the popular press, and a couple of the Mexican air officials were removed from office, perhaps because of a release of too much information. But we have a chain of information that is very substantial here. And we have multiple vehicles that were seen over Campeche, Mexico, which is close to the Yucatan, suggesting that this event's not going to go away. It's going to increase in scope and size, and we need vigilant researchers, engineers, social scientists, journalists, and people like yourself on the highways and byways who are willing to swim upstream, which you've been doing so well over these years.
Dr. Hurtak, how close to, let's see, what's the right word I'm searching for? A lot of what's already happened seems to be fact. It seems irrefutable if you want to look at it. The BBC, what happened in Africa, what's happened in Mexico, all of this, it seems almost irrefutable, and yet not on a scale yet that the world would describe as real, full, here they are, folks, type contact. But at the margins, you know, just at the margins where, I don't know, kind of where if you want to listen, the information is there. If you want to check out the information, you can do that and find out that it's true. But still, it's not on a global, it hasn't entered the global consciousness yet. We're not seeing the headlines in the newspaper yet. Except, you know, small and regionally, right? So when does it break into full consciousness? If you look ahead, is there any way to know when all of a sudden the world is going to realize not only are we being watched, but here it is, folks, contact?
Well, in 1973, I wrote this book, The Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch, and I said 2003, 2004 are the threshold where we will see things happening on the gut level. In other words, we're going into a whole new quantum change of realization, and in the global commons, more and more people will be coming out of the closet. We'll speak up to a closer audience that will be electrified by this information. On the other hand, people will be horrified by what I will call geopolitical movements, and the whole escapade of worldwide terrorism may drive people into a higher sense of prayer, of love, of compassion, asking the divine for help. And I feel this is where we cross over the old scientific paradigms into the new, or future science, as I call it. We reach out and realize we have cosmic cousins. We have angelic or ultra-terrestrial, not extraterrestrial, ultra-terrestrial life forms that can communicate with us through higher levels of sensitivity in music. And to that end, I put together a database of music with great composers and singers who've been doing this research for some 30 years now. And we're going to make this and have made this available for those on our listening audience. Our website, keysofenoch.org, will acquaint them with some of the music research that's available.
Okay. All right. And I'm sure we have a link on that on our website tonight. But once again, for those who may miss it or whatever, give them the website again.
Keys, like what you carry to open a lock on the door, Keys of Enoch, ENOCH. .org, O-R-G, and if they use that, they'll see a menu of various selections, both dealing with visual research documents as well as scientific papers, as well as music that's very, very important.
All right. Doctor, people are always asking for timetables, and I'm no different. I look at the world around me right now, and I see the north and the south part of our world melting. I see changes in sea currents and weather patterns, and all of this appears to be accelerating very quickly. And so maybe you would be the person to ask, is there a way to put a timetable to how rough all of this is going to get and how soon it's going to get past the tolerable level?
Well, I had the opportunity 2 years ago to speak at the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa, with leading scholars, marine biologists, those involved with ocean dynamics, and it's clear that if the ocean goes up 10 centimeters, which is not too much, thousands of islands are going to be inundated or will disappear quickly. So we're looking at massive areas of human population in the South Pacific and the Indian Ocean, other places that will be underwater very, very soon. I cannot underscore the seriousness of bringing out more and more of information regarding what you and Whitley so well put together that eventuated into the film The Day After Tomorrow, which was very well received in Europe. I don't want to push the panic button, but I'm saying we have a little more breathing room if we can get together an orchestrated policy to avoid the environmental hazards that we face on many, many fronts. But I don't want to look at this in terms of a timeline, but rather an event-based situation, that if we can work more carefully with our environmental specialists, our social scientists, our futurists, our thinkers, we may be able to buy time in some parts of the world. Other parts of the world will be up for grabs. And I don't mean to go as far as Ed Dames and saying that the curtain's going to be closed, but fortunately we do have other divine counterparts that I believe will enter onto the human scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to discuss this at greater length with you, but we have a documentary now prepared called The Light Body. It's a DVD, it's a film that will show other life forms graphically represented in a type of computer experience, so people can get orientated in that direction. In any event, I'd like to have my wife Desiree, who's an environmentalist and also social scientist, join the radio audience with your permission at this stage.
Absolutely. Bring her on.
This is Desiree, and if you could give us some insights regarding the solar happenings that Art spoke of earlier in the evening.
Hi, Art. Thank you for having me on.
Hi, Desiree.
One of the interesting things, of course, is Japan just had a major earthquake today. I think some of your audience knows about that.
A big earthquake, yeah.
Yeah, 6.8, which we live out here by San Francisco. We know what that's all about. And it was 160 miles from Tokyo, so that's quite close. And so you're looking at things like that taking place. You're looking at, of course, the volcanoes going on by Mount St. Helens, and you're thinking about, where does all this come together? I personally grew up in Florida, and so a lot of my family's there knowing about all the hurricanes. And I have to go back for a minute, if I can. About 1970 in the summer, I was sitting with about 3 or 4 people watching television. This is changing the subject a minute. But at the very end of the TV where it used to go off, like around 12 o'clock, there was a message that came on, and it said, you need to remove your ship off the coast of Florida. And this is over, of course, where Cuba, even though it was way beyond the time of the Bay of Pigs or any of these problems. Otherwise, there'll be major destruction in your area. And we all sit around and go, what is going on the television? We could not believe that message came across. It made no sense.
How many of you saw that?
Well, there were about 4 of us sitting there at late night on a summer evening in about 1970. We could not believe it. And so when things came up like in 74 with the BBC, you can see how other intelligences have been tracking us for a long time. They've been watching. They know what we're doing. They know what's going on the planet. And thank goodness, really.
Well, again, as impressive as the BBC story is, and it's very impressive, why not go for all the world's media? I know I asked your husband, the doctor, earlier about this. Why not, for example, just take over all the world's media and deliver the message about our planet? Then you'd really have something on your hands.
Well, I think maybe one of the happenings in the future, there may be an event whereby all satellites will be given a signal. There'll be broadband communication ranges that will be intercepted, and all of a sudden everybody, no matter what part of the world or whatever language, will get the clear message that we as a human race have basically given up our responsibilities, and as the message will go on, we have to be aware of our counterparts who will then give us an orientation. So I think that this may happen if things tend to erode very, very quickly.
Well, for both of you, believe me, if the whole world's broadcasting were taken over and a message about Earth and its dire, rather immediate future was given out, oh, God, I can barely imagine I guess the world might get Mad Maxed. I mean, such a message would panic people, absolutely panic people, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, people who have had contact experiences, these children, 62 children in Zimbabwe, their message that they came away with was, you know, the fact that the planet is on the verge of destruction in terms of the environment. You go to Carlos Diaz, who's a major contactee in Mexico, outside Mexico City, and he also, what's the message, Carlos? He'll tell you it's the environment. And, of course, your message with Whitney Strieber was also the environment. So I think you're doing a lot. If you look at this, we live, again, close to San Francisco. There's a university professor at University of California, Santa Cruz. His name is Gary Glucksmeyer, and he's looked at the entire model of how the Earth is on the verge of going through changes with the reduction of the magnetic field. Are you familiar with some of his research?
I am familiar with the reduction of magnetic fields.
Yeah, and so Glucksmeyer is the one that's done the modeling for this. And we feel it's all tied in. The whole thing with the earthquakes that we're all experiencing, the hurricanes, of course, having to do with the weather, it probably ties into what he looks at as the core mantle boundary. This is the temperature changes that are going on between the core and the mantle and then the entire globe. This could also be affected, according to the Keys of Enoch. We show that the solar flares actually coming in do affect parts of the planet that could cause some of these massive changes. So we feel it's a whole cosmic thing that's happening. It's not just the destruction we're causing.
Right.
That's a critical factor. We're kind of the last straw. We're the icing on the cake on top of all these other things going on. So we all have to be very consciously aware of what's taking place on the planet.
Can you, I asked your husband this, but I want to ask you too. Is there any way that you can help us understand how quickly this will now accelerate? I can only think to say to the intolerable point, assuming there's not a message of the magnitude we just talked about, and events just continue to unfold and accelerate as they are now, when it will become not tolerable in the sense that islands are disappearing, global changes are going on at an extremely fast clip. When do we get to that point?
Well, of course, the whole model of glaciation where, you know, the melting of these poles and the icebergs, scientists, I think 50 years ago would say it would never happen at the rate it's happening now. They are all shocked, as you very well know.
I very well know.
And,
story after story, they just cannot believe how it's accelerating. They're getting actually to the point where some of the stories, Desiree, are saying the switch that they were theoretically talking about, that switch, that instant switch, is already thrown.
But it's interesting. We see this, the Keys of Enoch talk about the fact that it's not just happening on this planet, that we're actually going through an entire galactic house cleaning. And there's a scientist at Hebrew University, I think his name is Shavir, who talks about the fact that we're also in a cycle on the entire galactic system that allows us to go up and down through the rings. One of the rings that we're in of the galaxy is the Orion ring, which is interesting, or the Orion arm of the galaxy. So all these different symbols, the solar flares that you talked about, you mentioned about the solar min earlier.
It's so bizarre.
We're not supposed to be in the solar min until 2006.
You're exactly right.
So we're 2 years early on this, which means
that's right.
The whole thing with these solar flares might be really coming up again into more of a max quicker than they've ever imagined. So the sun itself is going through massive changes. But we don't want to say anything about dates because we feel it is event-driven. It is almost galactic driven. It's solar driven.
Well, I know that remote viewing is event driven. When they try to put timelines on things with remote viewing, they don't. They say, well, when this happens, it's going to mean that we're close to that. Is that sort of correct?
Definitely. We're in a realization now of timeless awareness. We're in the realization that a whole new consciousness potential is available. We're at a point also, the point where I believe the ancient myths and scriptures come into play in the sense that they tell us that we have the ability to reach out with paranormal powers or spiritual endowments, gifts, to make contact with our positive counterparts, and together there is a mutual programming that takes place that will help us through this quagmire of planetary change.
Well, I'm not saying that American natives, for example, remote viewed. However, American natives relate what they know or what they think is going to happen, not by times, but by events. When you see this, then you can expect so-and-so to follow. That's the way they relate how they understand Earth changes will unfold as well. Isn't that right?
Yes, it's basically seeing time like a great river coming through the cosmos, not looking so much at the points, but seeing the whole area of what is happening with the collective.
Exactly. So all of these different disciplines and different people of different cultures may be doing the same thing, going ultimately to the same place in different ways. Is that fair?
Yes.
In fact, of course, the Bible also talks about event-driven. It says, Jesus said at one point that you'll hear wars and rumors of war. You'll see upheavals of the earth in one place out the other. These are all just signs. So it's another thing for the Christians to realize that these are the signs that we're all looking for. And another thing interesting, most people overlook the fact that the Bible talks about that the last cataclysm was of water. The next cataclysm will be of fire. So whether that relates to the sun or whether it relates to nuclear, happenings locally on the planet, these are all things we have to be aware of.
All right. You two hold tight. When we come back, we'll be taking calls for the Hurtaks. The both of them, actually. So if you don't know the numbers, they'll be coming up after the news break. I'm Art Bell. Dr. Hurtak and his wife, Desiree, are here with things that definitely make you go, in the night. Don't they? I mean, how can you ignore, when you hear what happened in Africa, and you hear what has actually happened all over the world, certainly in Mexico, many South American countries recently, with messages ostensibly being sent to humanity, many, many witnesses to the same event. How can that not make you go, at least, in the night? Well, not all, and I've got a message from one who wasn't affected that way at all. I'll read that in a moment. My guest, Dr. J.J. Hurtak, and his wife, Desiree. And I'm going to read you something from Laura in a place called Hell's Canyon, Washington. She says, "Hi, Art. I'm having fun listening to these woo-woo nuts you have on tonight. Now, don't get me wrong. I like the woo-woo, but these guys tonight are the higher vibration nuts. I need hard science to build this anti-grav machine, okay? I need hard woo-woo. So, some are going to react like that. Others are going to sort of not be sure of some, but very impressed by an awful lot of what you've told us tonight about the contact, for example. I'm one of those people. I do believe in science, and I know the interviews you did in Africa after the event there, and I know about the other things you've spoken about, and it is contact at some level. No question about it. Another person, not so critical, Ron in Chicago, says, "Hey, Art, it's all a time-release capsule. It's the only way it can be done properly, safely, to orient the world to what's about to happen." So he knows it's true and thinks it's being released piece by piece by piece. I guess you might want to tackle the criticism first, the woo-woo stuff, folks. You know it does sound to some people who are not listening carefully like woo-woo, to be dismissed out of hand. How do you respond, either one of you?
Actually, it's good to have critics. In fact, I invite people to be critical until they have their own level of experience, because the world requires things to be reduced to practical common sense. We live in a physical world of tens of millions of people who have to go to work from 8 to 5.
That's right.
Who have to juggle a whole practical schedule of happenings to make 50 to 500 illogical decisions every day at the traffic lights, and everything seems to run according to a certain practical pace. But we're dealing with a time area here of extraordinary events. What happens when the paradigm or the consciousness reality suddenly changes quickly?
And I also have to say that she's right that you need the practical, but many people who are starting to develop the practical, the electromagnetic motors, the more far-out technologies, have to step outside the box and look at the fact that there are other realities, and they can bring it back. And things are moving very quickly, as I think you know from many of your own interviews, that we might have a over-unity motor fairly soon, thank goodness, because the planet certainly needs it.
We might. All right, let's begin to take some questions from the audience. Line 1, good morning. You're on the air with the Hurtaks and Art Bell. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing great. Am I on the air?
You are on the air.
Hi, I'm so glad. I've been listening for a long time. I'm a musician. I heard you talk about musicians or music, and I have gone as far as Juilliard, and I have a lot of experience sitting in an orchestra or a band, and I have, developed something that all classical musicians or all people in musical groups develop.
What is that?
They communicate non-verbally with others around them. And we do that through our instruments. We don't speak, we play. And I believe we're developing something. And what my question is in the last couple of years, I have never been trained in remote viewing, but I believe that I've developed something that is allowing me to remote view the future or other people's lives, and it's driving me up a wall because this is not in my experience. It's something I'm not experienced with.
And you think this has been brought on by the music, by your music?
I believe that when you sit for, I calculated, 4th grade to about now, I'm 40, 30 years, I have been able to collaborate with people around me non-verbally through my instruments.
All right, let's throw this to the Hurtak.
Well, I had the opportunity some years ago to be on the music faculty with Morton Subotnick, who was the father of the first symphonic symphony. And Morton told me when he was playing his musical instrument, he could often project himself out into the audience and see himself still with the musical instrument. Also, Ravi Shankar told me a similar story. When he was playing the sitar, he could often project his body of consciousness into the audience and look back. I think this is something that comes with expertise and dexterity on the musical instrument, that you build a vibratory field. The harmonics and overtones can lift part of your consciousness into another dimensional reality, and in some instances you can actually see momentarily into the future.
Well, it may be that musicians experience a greater depth of what we're talking about here, but even as a listener of music, I know enough to know that it lifts me, it puts me into a different place. There's absolutely no question about it. Music has an effect that words don't easily describe, but most everybody in the audience understands.
Part of our research was in the Great Pyramid, and we were on with Barbara Simpson the last time, and talking about the sound vibrations inside the Great Pyramid, and we recorded some of that, and you bring that back and you play it for an audience, and they themselves go into these vibrations. It's like bringing the higher frequencies or certain vibrations of resonance back to wherever you are on the planet. So we truly believe that music really does change the consciousness. When you have certain frequencies, certain sounds, this is why the people of the East always use mantras and tonings and singing from certain ways. And a singer really knows that he can reach higher states of almost like higher states of consciousness, higher states of feeling, if I can say that, when he sings with the breath movement. So I agree with this person, and we've used the singing and the tones very much in our work.
I want to play something for you. Actually, maybe a couple of somethings, and I want to get your off-the-hip impression about what you're going to hear without telling you what it is. Would that be all right?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, here it comes. There'll be two examples, I think. That's example number one. I want to know how you react to that. And this is number two. And you know what? All right, I wonder how you reacted to those sounds.
Well, one sounds like SETI, sounds from outer space being captured. Another sounds like computers that are working with a synthesizer or music. A third, which is in the lower octave range, reminds me of experiments we did in Africa. We were able to capture the sounds of insects and amplify them.
Do you want to know what you were listening to?
Go ahead.
You were listening to recordings of harp.
Interesting.
Do you know what harp is?
Definitely.
Did you say definitely?
Yes.
Yes, those were actual on-air recordings of what harp is aiming at our ionosphere.
Some claim that those sounds have had a triggering mechanism on weather patterns and have had unsettling effect on animal populations.
Yes. Yes, some claim that indeed. All right, I just wanted to get your reaction. That's what's being aimed at our ionosphere. A wildcard line, you're on the air with the Hurtak. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Well, just on a note off the music thing.
Yes.
Music is actually banned in some, I think, Muslim cultures, possibly others, because of it reaches the ecstatic.
What a very good point.
But I was calling actually with a question.
Yes.
So if, for example, we use the ocean just as an indication of like the level of extraordinary diversity that exists. And so I've always imagined that there's an extraordinary diversity of, I guess I'm going to call them non-terrestrial things. And my question is, if you can say, how many divisions, departments of the American government works on these issues?
Mm-hmm.
I guess including classified ones?
Mm-hmm.
And for that matter, does the UN have like an office for this? And of those, which ones are most supportive of the doctor's work?
That's a lot.
I know that's a lot.
It's a lot. All right, so stay on the line here, caller.
Okay.
How many branches or sections of our government, either one of you, are actually aware of the receipt of these messages and the ongoing contact?
Well, I think they initially started with the Navy way back when, so you'd have to include the Navy and then, of course, the Air Force. Those were the principal ones back.
So you think the Navy and the Air Force are both aware?
Yeah, in the very beginning it was the Navy, strange enough, in the 40s and 50s. It was before the Air Force. And then the Air Force got involved, and then, of course, you have, Pentagon, and you have, in some cases, administration levels. We don't think that the normal, House of Representatives, senators, those people are, for the most part, unless they're on special committees, are aware. The UN certainly does not have, at this point, any divisions. There was a time, as Dr. Hurtak mentioned with Kurt Waldheim, that they had tried to establish a committee, but they were never able to do that.
So what we're saying is, in a practical way, there's been some independent work behind the scenes where certain sound ranges, usually in the subharmonic areas, has been done to demodulate the signals. I'm not permitted to go into this extensively other than the fact that we know through our personal research the Argentinian military force did pick up musical signals coming from a craft that did come down in one location.
There have been
NSA and those type of agencies that have worked with these sound frequencies also tapping into some of these vehicles.
There's a lot of internet rumors right now that there are as many as 18 or 19 SETI signals that have been received and are in the process of being decoded. It's at the internet rumor level, I admit, but I am hearing it from a number of sources. Either one of you or any of you hear anything about that?
I haven't talked with the SETI people at NASA Ames to.
Oh, they wouldn't tell you.
But I do know that the background before SETI, Project OSMA had looked at something like 67 targets for signals, and they could not unscramble or come across something. Although there was something peculiar a few years ago that's being looked at now through one of my colleagues in the range of a higher form of mathematical deciphering.
Yes, I'm getting a sense, Doctor, that there's quite a bit that you know that you can't or won't talk about. Why?
Well, this is research in progress that involves the cooperation of any people who have to go out and do the field studies, the field research, and of course, because the whole concept here flies in the face of normal logic. Mm-hmm. People who have a background extensively in musicology and other areas of work may be reluctant to be on the page at this time, but we are working, for example, with the raw material, RA, and through a colleague in the American Southwest that I think will be of help to you and to the caller. And we are working, his name is Wes Bateman, who's working with the whole new mathematics and the whole new music paradigm here that I think is really going to be useful in cracking the code. We are working also with a plethora of projects from Japan to the Yucatan to the Near East of looking at the musical ranges of using very sensitive sounds inside the temples and pyramids. In fact, if you are interested in speaking now of the audience, and you, Art, we have through the Academy a tape entitled The Living Capstone that actually is the recordings we made inside the Great Pyramid, and you can hear a certain sound that are very, very powerful, as well as you will see on the cover of the DVD the actual picture of a light event where what we will call a light happening took place when they reached certain acoustical levels.
All right. Well, you promote this. How do they get it?
It was done by just the opportunity of being in an acoustical chamber, a sound chamber, where the energy levels go to such a high range.
Doctor, I mean, how did the listeners get it?
Oh, they can go to our website under music, keysatenoch.org, and then under music, they can call up and listen to that offering that's there.
So it's there for free?
That this has to be ordered. We will have a music clip that will be available in the future. We're trying to put a lot of material out now from various parts of the world, from African musicians we work with, those in Russia, other countries.
Doctor, do you have examples of it on your website that people can hear?
We are working on the music chip presently.
Okay. All right. So they can order. How much is it? And they can do it on your website, right?
The CD is $16.95.
Okay, $16.95. Not all that bad at all. That's a CD full of this.
Right. Now, mind you, we've had composers and musicians. Some of them are very renowned who have worked with the material that we have been working with for more than 30 years, entitled The Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch. We referred to Carlos Santana as one, various Russian composers, German composers, who have incredible compositional skills to work at different ranges on various octaves beyond the normal range.
Understood. Caller, anything else?
I guess as a follow-up to what I had asked, if there are parts of the government that are supportive of this kind of work, or for that matter, there are parts of the government that are specifically unsupportive?
Yes, that's a very good question. Are there very supportive portions and conversely very unsupportive ones?
I would say in general terms that there's been no real problems in walking on water. The music directions are beyond the range of what most people are interested in, even beyond the range of people interested in so-called category of ET evidence.
So you're saying there are no government agencies interested?
What I'm saying is there are independents interested, but no agencies as such.
Officially. Okay. Do you think we're on the verge of that? Is the research going to get close to the point where you will call attention to the top of some major organizations, either one of you?
Well, I think if you take the powers that you see with HARP, I think you brought that up. That's a critical factor. They are starting to understand the power of the mind, the power of certain sound signals. We worked with ELF back in the 70s. So some of these things are coming about, and it all ties into extraterrestrial intelligence as well, because there has been levels of communications the government is aware of, and some of these things are happening through different frequencies, not just through the audible.
I think most researchers out there recognize there are musical and acoustical resonance patterns that do affect the mind. And some of these areas that were used back in the 30s and the 40s and 50s for purposes of the study of how the mind reacts.
All right, Doctor, hold tight. We're at the bottom of the hour. We'll be right back from the high desert in the middle of the night. It's your call, folks. You've received an awful lot of information this night. I'm Art Bell. If you have questions for the Hurtaks, they're here for another 30 minutes in the darkness with us all. Once again, the Hurtaks, is there anything critical to the both of you that we should have touched on so far in the show and have not?
I feel the studies on Mars, our sister planet, they're very important. If we find one microbe that is good enough to trigger a reappraisal of where we are in the universe, we've changed a whole new page. The second genesis of knowing where we are in the cosmic scheme of things is at our front door, and I feel the studies on Mars are going to be very, very important, along with the archaeological work that's being done to show that there's more to our past, as well as the future science that's going to show us there is a bridge to our future. We're at the stage of making a reappraisal, both past, present, and future.
Good enough. All right. On my international line, you're on the air with the Hurtaks. Hello. Where are you calling from, please?
From South Australia.
South Australia. All right. Very good. Welcome to the program. Do you have a question?
Yep. Hi, Dr. Hurtak and Desiree. It's Darren Curtis here from South Australia. I'm a musician working with the science of acoustics, vibration, and healing. And this question is addressed to either both of you. Why do some of the spiritual people, with all their prayers and use of key vibrations, still experience physical disease, and how can we as individuals and a collective humanity understand the mystery of healing? For example, Elizabeth Targ and how she tried so hard to explain and explore.
It's a very good question. Elizabeth Targ, who was very close to us, of course, received a $1 million grant from NIH to look at this whole new area that the mind does have enormous powers, in some instances can change a state of serious illness into one of immediate recovery and change.
But what was interesting was that she received the grant to heal remotely a particular type of brain cancer, and that was exactly the cancer that she ended up dying from, even before or just at the very beginning of getting this grant. So it was a very interesting scenario. I'm glad that Daryl brought that up. It seems that we are operating on several levels of reality. I mean, we have the physical body that we're really familiar with, but there's other energy layers and other energy shells that are part of us. And I think, at least for the most part, we are being bombarded by a lot of different chemicals, a lot of different pollutants, a lot of even solar radiations that we're not even aware of, that I think is really conflicting with our harmonious system.
Now, to look at this constructively, my colleagues and I are working on what we call a medicine of light, and we found out that the human DNA does receive signals throughout the human system through levels of certain music orientation. Some would call this spiritual music, others would call this the higher music of the spheres, as it was referred to by the ancients, but definitely there's a correlation between music, healing, and recharging, readapting the human system.
In fact, the DNA is like a waveform. People are starting to realize that it's like a vibration, a wave harmonic. And so it's very easy to pick up and to tune and to change. And I think people just need to work with this more, and they'll be able to see some profound healing.
So if you go to the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine for February of 2004, which is a leading journal, you will see there's an article that goes into the medicine of life. It goes into the research that's being done by our medical colleagues, and we do have programs available for those interested seriously in where medicine, music, and vibrational research come together.
Okay, Colin?
Yeah, my music's been with working with Susan Alexandra and musical DNA, and also exploring the work of Gariev and his colleagues of how our DNA operates as a
That's right. We published their work in one of our journals called the Journal of Future History. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. First-time caller line, you're on the air with the Hurtaks. Hi.
Hi, this is John calling from Pine Bush. I've worked with Jim and Desi on some environmental projects.
You all recognize each other?
Oh, yes, great. Thank you. I just wanted to briefly mention some of the work that we've done together. We've published a paper dealing with the technology that I've developed that is able to treat different types of aquatic pollution. And recently, we've done quite a bit of work. I have about a dozen different projects going on right now that are very successful, and I could attribute part of my success to the opportunities that were opened up and given to me due to the exposure that Dr. Hurtak and his wife have given to my research. So I wanted to thank them both. And
Thank you, John. Well, we are part of the Academy for Future Science, so we do look at trying to help the planet, try to heal the planet. And John's done a lot of work in purifying water, whether it's at pig farms or one of his great things. This is a fantastic thing. He actually got a contract with the Statue of Liberty Island because they were putting sludge over to New Jersey to dump all the waste, and they were kind of clogging up the pipes. It had to go all the way from the Statue of Liberty all the way to New Jersey, and it kept getting stuck in the middle of the pipes underneath the water. And his technology was able to clean out the pipes. It was able to eat through all the sludge and the garbage that was going in. So he's cleaned up ponds of water. He's cleaned up local bays. He's done a tremendous job in trying to fix the planet.
That's amazing. That technology exists is amazing, and I'm glad you helped him along. But, in the bigger picture, both of you, or either one of you, as much as we may be doing, it really does look like we're almost in a runaway situation here without the good guys at the moment winning or even close. And at that, it may not be so much man's hand. It may be a change that's in the works. You alluded to that earlier, that
Correct.
Man may have a very small part of it, Desiree. How much of a part does man play in this?
Well, I think you also have to take it on a consciousness level. We've got to make an effort. We've got to show really the cosmic humanity that we are trying to straighten ourselves up. Because otherwise, we'll just be part of the ooze and go down. I think the key thing that we realize is that there is an afterlife, and this ties into some of the stuff we were talking about with one of your other callers. And, this planet, we keep incarnating. We believe that we reincarnate. We keep incarnating, going around. And at a certain point, either we get our consciousness high enough to get off the planet, or the planet will no longer be here for us to incarnate, and we'll just be stuck here without a planetary system to go to. So it's something to really think about. We have to show our higher brothers and sisters who are out there, who are a brotherhood, who are a sisterhood, that we can be part of that higher level of reality.
I would like to use the word biogenesis rather than reincarnation or incarnation because that's a buzzword. Are we cosmic freaks without any pre-existing scripts, or are we deeply embedded within the family of nations in the universe? And we clearly know that there are cosmic cultures. We clearly know that life is showing its presence. We clearly know that new scientific methodologies have to be evolved, and we clearly know that the the world commons, has to be open. Planet Earth, as a schoolhouse, has to hear the message loud and clear that there's a great homecoming ahead for us if we use a higher consciousness, whether we call it the Christ consciousness or the divine I am consciousness, whatever language we use, it has to be a higher self-realization that we are a very important part of this family of creation.
All right. Let's go to the wildcard line. You're on the air with the Hurtaks. Hello.
Hello, hi. I have several questions, and one of them is, I have a sister-in-law who is very much have feelings for Orion, and I would like to know if there's anything the Hurtaks could tell me about that, and if they can play their music.
Okay, just hold on. Orion, that's a pretty big question.
She doesn't.
Well, if I can say, the Keys of Enoch was the first book that I know of to publish the alignment of the Great Pyramid, one side with Orion, the other side with Alpha Draconis. This is back in the early 1970s, which is a
Belt of Orion.
Yeah, connected with the Belt of Orion, and we commend Boval for bringing this out and helping fulfill one of the keys by making this thing known. But not only is Orion significant in Egypt, but Orion is also significant to the Mayans. They consider the Orion part of the source of creation. And so we feel also that the higher Lords of Light, some of the higher intelligence, is based in Orion. In fact, in Dr. Hurtak's experience, he was actually taken through a certain field or area of Orion that was like the gateway out of this three-dimensional universe into higher realms. So we do feel that that's a key location. I want to reiterate that the Great Pyramid, people think that's where the Pharaoh actually was to go back to Orion when he ascended. But from our cosmology, also the Lords of Light kind of came to this planet and brought the wisdom from Orion down here. So it works both ways. It's a very significant constellation in terms of the Keys of Enoch.
It's really funny because she's not involved at all in anything New Age, paranormal, etc. But she has this longing or feeling or that something is very significant there. So she may be in her deep past. She had something to do with it.
Well, the ancient texts of Job, the other parts of Scripture refer to Orion in a very significant way. So whether we use it in the historic context or metaphors of what we find in the cultures of China, Tibet, Central America, South America, they all point to this region of the local universe as being very significant. And
well, maybe we could have come from there, something like that.
Well, it's been suggested that this is one of the primary areas. Of course, there are multiple areas. There's a plethora of possibilities in space, and we have to acknowledge that we must see the larger universe, and we must see the larger opportunities we're going to have dealing with so many different cosmic civilizations. This is where the selective factor is important.
Doctor, or either one of you, do you believe that our origins are as described in the Bible, in Genesis? Do you think that God's hand created all that is? There was light, there was the world, then boom, there we were. Or did we get planted from elsewhere?
Well, actually, we take the Bible as being very literal, but we don't take it as being 7 days. We take it as being 7 eons, which means we actually came from a higher coding mechanism. Even the laws of the universe came from a higher coding mechanism that eventually came to life. Now, how it got here, that's a very intricate story. We feel the planet evolved through certain types of, like the dinosaurs. They were brought here by certain levels of intelligence that were to see the planet for that level of its experience. Then when it came to another level of experience, you had certain other races, such as the Adamic race, that came to the planet from other intelligences, which is why when we go out in space, we'll find other intelligences that also look like us, some that do, some that don't, because we're all part of this greater blueprint.
Okay. West of the Rockies, you're on the air with the Hurtaks. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
You're going to have to speak up good and loud, hon.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
Okay. Wanted to explain several different things having to do with not only the prophecies and how the Mayan the visual over Mexico City all plays a part in what is being said. When you take a look at the July 11th, 1991 sighting over Mexico City with the eclipse and so on, and then you consider what is considered very most important crop drawing or crop glyph, whatever you want to call it, in Barberry Castle, July 17th, 6 days later in the UK, 6 days later on 1991. Then you'll also find that on July 23rd, 6 days later again, there was another crop glyph, and once again 6 days later, it was to signal how to handle the 666. July 17th, 1991 was the instructions on how to handle it.
Are you aware of this?
Yes, I'm familiar with the research. I think Jaime Maussan posted the details, and I would say Mexico is a port of entry for many of the off-planetary extrasolar influences. Again, I would say to the caller that we must be prepared that we're dealing with a variety of influences, and we must go to the highest levels of petitioning the Godhead or the ultra-terrestrial levels of intelligence for positive signs that are clearly recognizable.
Why Mexico?
Mexico has this historic relationship with the indigenous cultures. This is also true for parts of North America. We find that there's a situation now developing that will bring Mexico, the United States, and Canada closer together as the symbol of the dove, the La Paloma, makes itself known. These three countries share a unique history with the indigenous people and some of the experiments that were created here tens of thousands of years ago. And I believe this new work in anthropology and culture history will identify key areas of rewriting history via things that we're finding now in Mexico. And for that matter, we've been finding also areas in Brazil that go back something on the order of 40 to 50,000 years.
There have been recent incidences in Brazil as well. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with the Hurtaks. Good morning.
Good morning, Art. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Hurtak. Could I ask you to please give a snail mail address so that I could send you a letter?
All right. That's a fair question. Are you willing? Do you have an address that you can give out over the air?
You can write to the Academy for Future Science, Post Office Box F as in Frank, E as in Edward, just F-E. If you know Spanish, it's Fe for faith. The city is Los Gatos, the Cats, L-O-S, G-A-T-O-S, California, 95031. And we're happy to answer any and all correspondence. I wanted to go back to that last caller. You know, it's interesting she mentioned crop circles, and I found it fascinating that crop circles are starting to appear also in this country. I think since the year 2000 there were some in the Dakotas, which have had some really unique alignments with various areas that were sacred to the Native Americans. And so we're starting to see really the signs of the watchers, if I can put it that way, throughout the Americas, throughout the world. And many people are starting to tie into the fact that we are coming into a age of awakening for all of us.
Huh. So, any idea why the truly complex circles in incredible numbers appear in Great Britain and other things are now intensifying in Mexico? Why chosen countries? Anybody have any guesses?
I do want to add that the circles, in some cases, have been tied into music and sound and frequency vibrations. And I think that should be mentioned. It's so important.
Well, it fits right in, I guess, doesn't it?
I had the opportunity to share my information with Joe Hawkins, who looked at it and looked for musical and mathematical clues, and we both agreed that the crop circles are part of a new language of music. And some of these crop circles appear around megalithic sites that show historic areas of development of society and civilization. And they may be also safe areas for certain parts of the world to be in when changes that are coming happen. So to put this in a nutshell, pardon the pun, or time capsule, we are breaking out of the old game. We're realizing that things are coming together very quickly from all parts of the world. People are realizing that the information is increasing and will require a whole new futurism, a whole new science of consciousness, a whole new understanding of musicology, a whole new realization that we are cosmic beings, that our soul is doomed to perfection, that we have the ability to open up, as it were, the door of great and cosmic events from a positive side. If we choose to go with the upper spiral, if we choose to look at negativity and make it our ends, we will be taken out by the downward spiral, by the negativity that shows itself curiously throughout history.
All right. Well, listen, we're out of time. I want to thank both of you for being here. And again, if you would please, the website, because that's what people who are interested, that's where they're going to go. So where do they go?
keysofenoch.org. I just want to close with this statement, Art, from Freeman Dyson, the great scientist, who said, the more I examine the universe, the more the universe must have known that we are coming. The principle of maximum diversity is deeply embedded in nature and embedded within ourselves. And the more we see all of the evidence, the more we realize that we are truly citizens of the universe, and our God-given talent is here for us to use. May we bless the world in this troublesome period. May we go forth in great faith and great hope.
Okay, you two, we've got to go. Good night, Desiree. And good night, Doctor. Take care. Well, there you have it. It's either message received or message misunderstood or not heard. All of that is up to you, but that's why we present this material. I'm Art Bell. See you tomorrow night.